Hi there, and welcome to the Sunday Preview. I'm Father Richard Gill from St. Lawrence O'Toole and Sacred Heart Parishes in Brewster and Paterson, New York. And we're glad to come to you today. The Sunday Preview is going to replace the Daily Bread that we were doing Monday to Friday. And we want to look ahead to the liturgy coming up every Sunday and help you prepare for it. We're going to read the Gospel together, and if we do that on Thursday every week, and we take a little time to reflect, I'm sure the experience on Sunday is going to be more powerful. When you listen to the homily, it's going to resonate in a stronger way. So this week, the 22nd Sunday of the year, we have this great gospel from chapter 19 of St. Matthew's Gospel. Chapter 16 of St. Matthew's Gospel. And it goes like this. Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer greatly from the elders, the chief priests, the scribes, and be killed, and on the third day be raised. Peter took Jesus aside and began to rebuke him. God forbid, Lord, no such thing shall ever happen to you. He turned and said to Peter, Get behind me, Satan. You are an obstacle to me. You are not thinking as God does, but as human beings do. Then Jesus said to his disciples, Whoever wishes to come after me must deny himself, take up his cross and follow me. For whoever wishes to save his life will lose it. Whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. What profit would there be for one to gain the whole world and forfeit his life? Or what can one give in exchange for his life? For the Son of Man will come with his angels in the Father's glory, and he will repay all according to his conduct. The Gospel of the Lord. We see this very extraordinary scene where Jesus is apparently trying to prepare his apostles for the fact that he'll have to suffer and die. And St. Peter's having none of that. He takes the Lord aside and tries to correct him and say, Lord, that can't happen. I think it helps for us to remember the gospel from last week. It was the passage just before this in the same Gospel of Matthew, where Jesus took those apostles and Peter made that great profession of faith up in Caesarea Philippi. And they were in that pagan shrine. And Jesus, after Peter professed his faith that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of the living God, the Lord promised Peter that he is the rock on which the church would be built and the gates of hell would not prevail against it. And so you might forgive Peter a little bit for thinking that he was invulnerable and that this movement that Jesus was starting was going to be powerful and going to continue to grow because the gates of hell would not prevail against it. And then suddenly Jesus is telling Peter that everybody has to take up their cross, that Jesus himself is going to suffer and die. And Peter's all torn by this. But Jesus says something very important we all need to remember. He says, you're thinking as men think, not as God thinks. And that's the divine logic. I think in the second reading for this Sunday from St. Paul's letter to the Romans, we see a similar theme. St. Paul says, do not conform yourselves to this age, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, so that you can discern the will of God, what is good and pleasing and perfect. You see, God has a different way of thinking than we do. Very often we think out of fear, self-protection, human prudence. God's thinking of the big picture, that it's through taking up our cross, through suffering and death and resurrection, that the world is redeemed. It's hard for us to break that way of thinking, to take the safe route. And we're always struggling with it in our daily lives, to avoid any kind of discomfort, any kind of suffering, any kind of sacrifice, where the logic of God is it's through that death and resurrection that we're brought to life. So many times we're fleeing the cross. We do it almost automatically without even thinking. Jesus is inviting us into the logic of God, into God's way of thinking. let's take some time in the next couple of days before we celebrate Sunday and we listen to this gospel at Mass. Let's ask Him to send the Holy Spirit to shine His light on us so we can think God's way. Thanks very much.